Divorced men of Reddit, what moment with your former wife made me think yup, I'm asking this girl to divorce me? When she presented a picture of our 4-year-old daughter and me laying next to each other on the couch watching Blue's Clues to our marriage counselor as evidence of my inappropriate conduct around our kids. Thank God he saw right through that bullshit immediately and told her to knock it off. Edit. Many asked, so here's the deal, we've been divorced for almost 5 years now. The process wasn't fair, but that wasn't really my ex's fault. No allegations of child abuse or misconduct were brought up against me during the proceedings, so that was good. They wouldn't have flown for a minute in court anyway. Our kids are older now and every day are becoming better equipped to see and understand the difference between what's reasonable and right and what's simply just batshit insane, and it's not working out all that well for their mother, who hasn't changed her modus operandi much if at all since we parted ways, so it goes. I'm happily remarried now to a woman with kids of her own, kids who were friends and schoolmates of my kids before she and I even got to know each other. They're all our kids now, life is good, no more shenanigans. 15 years in, and I find texts on her phone, completely blindsided. No clue she had it in her to cheat. Told me it was just texting, begged for forgiveness, I caved. A month later, I checked the phone bill to find that it never stopped. Confronted her again. Cue more begging and more denial on my part that she would let the life we had built go down in flames. This went on for a few months. So many promises. One night, I caught her on the phone when she thought I had left. Suddenly it's not just texts. Sometimes it was phone calls too. Just a friend she could talk to that she let things go too far with. Promised to break all contact. Swore it was never physical. Then I found emails. She detailed things that made me sick to read, but also included descriptions of his house. She broke finally, but swore it was all just in the line of duty. That's how she met, you see. Visiting nurse service, and this guy was a client. Promised she was done. Loved me, you see. No chance she was going to let 15 years go like that. I wasn't buying it anymore though. She announced she was going out one night with a work friend. Promised they were only going to the bar, then she'd be home. Maybe late, but not too late. She had taken over her own phone account by then, but wasn't bright enough to understand that Google Latitude was still showing me where she was, and I wasn't about to show my hand. She kissed me goodbye and beelined right for his house, and was there until the wee hours of the morning. Once I knew where she had headed, I called her dad and my best friend to keep me from doing anything dumb. I will love them both forever for keeping me calm while my world went faking insane all around me. My father-in-law offered to stay with the kids and wait for her to get home. Around 3 a.m., while couch surfing my buddy's place, she sent me a nasty text asking where the fake I thought I was. I texted her a screenshot of her little GPS. At her boyfriend's and let her know I'd be sending her some paperwork soon. Preface: we were doing a trial separation. She moved into the spare bedroom of our apartment. Divorce had been thrown around, but we still spent time together and slept together. I wasn't seriously considering divorce, but rather counseling, etc. Up until the day I came home from work at the same time I came home every day, and she was in her room being faked by some random guy she met on Tinder. She had not told him she was married. I kicked him out of the apartment and made it clear to her I would be moving out as soon as possible. Edit. Must add that she expressed interest in counseling as well, and that we discussed ground rules for the separation, one of which was do not fake other people. Edit 2. Thanks for all the love. For those asking, I moved out because I couldn't afford the apartment on my own. I didn't kick the guy's ass, but I did tell him while punching the door that he had 3 minutes to get out of my apartment. I said if he wasn't out in 3 minutes I was going to break down the door, and it wouldn't be to shake hands. Proud of that line from enraged me. Usually I'm not very articulate when angry. He was out in a little over 2 minutes. We met and spent the first 7 years of our married life on the West Coast, then moved east. 5 years later, I took a job back on the West Coast, but it was the middle of the school year, so I went out ahead and lived on my own until everyone could join me. Things hadn't been very good between us for a while, but I hadn't articulated it to her, or even myself, beyond vague feelings of dissatisfaction. One weekend, out there on my own, I decided to take a day and drive to one of my favorite towns, a town in which I had lived long before I knew her, a town we had visited often while married. It was late afternoon and I was about to head back to my hotel when I realized that I could visit a particular beach that had special meaning to me from my earlier life there. I stopped at a convenience store, grabbed a grolsch like I used to drink on that beach, and drove out there, hiked out to a specific spot I remembered, sat down, popped the beer, and looked out over the ocean. And it hit me that I hadn't done that in over 20 years. Whenever we'd visit the area, I'd suggest stopping at the beach, but she wasn't interested and would always veto the idea. I'm sure reading this it seems like the tiniest thing, but it was the catalyst for me realizing just how completely dissatisfied I was with our relationship. I think from the time I sat down, I knew it was over within maybe 10 minutes. Just sitting there, sipping my beer, looking at the ocean. Grolsch is indeed a Dutch beer. It can be had in distinctive green bottles with hinged, resealable ceramic caps. I chose it because when I had lived in that place before, and had headed out to that specific beach with friends, I'd always bring grolsch. During the last year and a half of our marriage she became extremely psychologically abusive. She was a narcissist, controlled my every move, would isolate me, refused physical contact. I was just an extension to her life, was not allowed to talk to any female, was not allowed to hang out with any friends, or she would ignore me for up to 5 days at a time. Double standards everywhere, verbal abuse, and the list can continue, but it hurts to think about. The last straw for me was when she threatened to kill me because I came home from work late even though she knew I would be home late. It was just a little too late for her, and she also threatened to hit me the same day. This was the second time this happened and I talked with several people at work about it and they suggested that I run. I had texts of the threats on my phone and contacted a lawyer that same week. She agreed to sign since I told her I would take severe legal action if she didn't. Not me, but one of my best friends got his permission to post. He got a pretty substantial year-end bonus from work. He decided to use most of it for his wife's Christmas gift and pay off her remaining student loans, $14,700, and the remaining portion to buy a new computer chair for when he gambled, $300. Christmas morning, he was nice enough to let me stay at his place when I traveled for work as he lived 20 minutes from the airport. We all woke up and had breakfast. His family and her parents came over and we started exchanging gifts. Besides paying off her loans, he had gotten her items a few times. She opened the card saying her loans were paid off. She just sat there for a minute. After the silence, and assuming she was kinda in shock, she asked, "Did you seriously not get me anything else? I bought you that stupid keyboard, the wrong one by the way, and you only got me a few things?" At that point, his brother-in-law and myself decided to go hang out in another room for a while. They ended up getting into a huge fight. A day later when he was dropping me off at the airport he told me that he was going to visit a lawyer and get a divorce. She had lost her job, again, after quitting a decent one because she didn't get along with her boss. Anyways, a few months go by and I'm doing everything, cooking, laundry, dishes, yard work, etc. I'd ask the kids what mom does all day and they said she plays on the computer all day. So the final straw came when I came home from work and had to wash dishes so I could make dinner. Dinner is made so I tell my family it's ready. She comes to get a plate and serves herself first instead of our youngest child who was 4 at the time and couldn't serve himself. As I watched this unfold it dawned on me, if I'm going to do all the work I might as well do it by myself or find a partner to share the load with because she clearly didn't want to be on my team. Edit. To those mentioning depression, yes she was, and maybe still is. She was on meds for it and we went to counseling after the birth of one of our kids and she had postpartum depression. At this time she stepped out on our marriage with at least 3 guys. I finally got proof with a hidden caller ID and a voice-activated tape recorder hidden under our bed. Yep, got to hear them having sesh. Long story but we stayed together. I'd if the counseling helped or not. I also need to add that she was never good with money, blew a small inheritance in record fashion. She would give me money for joint bills and I was handing it back over so she could put gas in her car or she had a bill of hers due. One year we got a nice tax refund and she promptly tells me she owes her stepdad $2,000. Oh, what the fake? Still stayed. In short, my earlier response was to Op's question and the edit is some background so you know that this was something that had been building for years. Wasn't married but about 1 month away from marrying. We worked together at the same job for about a year but she was first shift and I was second. We both had weekends off so we could and did things on the weekend. We had got everything paid for and were set. One weekend, actually on my birthday, I went to get a haircut before we went out for the night. I weirdly noticed this one car in the parking lot of our apartments. Didn't think too much as there was a sheet ton of cars that would come and go. She had gone up to a casino with her mom the previous night and stayed overnight. That wasn't uncommon as they were both huge gamblers. I got back and did some cleaning and she walked in. She looked at me and threw a ring on the table and said, "We need to talk. I think I like Joe more now and decided I want to be with him. I don't need the ring and you can cancel the wedding." It all clicked that the car I saw was Joe's. She didn't go up to the casino with her mom but with Joe instead. Even more faked up as I called her mom to see how close they were to home and she covered for her daughter. He was always trying to befriend me too and act like we were best friends. I have never felt less of a man, more ashamed and hurt than when this happened. I sacrificed a lot for her. I was there doing anything and everything for her and her family when her dad very slowly passed away. And she ends up treating me like a pet she could get rid of when she got bored. I still can't remember a few months of time after that happened. I was in a bad place. I worked, she played. She woke me up in the middle of the night to grab the extra blanket off the bed. I expected to find her disgruntled on the couch alone the next morning. I found her in the guest bed with another woman both naked. No forewarnings or clue-ins, just despondent betrayal. I woke her for answers and got a whole lot of mumbles. Decided to split for space. That weekend we both ended up at the same bar on the same dance floor. I thought she'd followed me there to make amends. She'd brought the same girl and completely ignored me when I called out to her. When I walked up to her she pretended I was a stranger. I told her I'm not going to play any games and didn't know what was going on. She said she didn't want to be married. I gave her the ring back and went to tell my friends goodbye that night. I didn't want to tell them why. I felt so embarrassed. She saw me talking to my friends and decided to make out in front of us with her new woman directly on the dance floor 8 feet away from where I stood while everyone stared. Looking back now I realize she probably was scared to come out. I can give her credit for that. But she was an awful person for the way she did it and for never having the courage to say to my face whatever she was feeling. I thought we were best friends. I thought we were going to be together forever. She asked me to marry her. Now I'm just grateful for not being with a liar and a coward. I've made a fresh start. Sold everything. Traded my entire wardrobe and style to feel like I'm in a new life. Sure, I've lost more money than I ever thought imaginable. And the dog. I just keep optimistic that I'll find someone who deserves my time. I don't focus on the past and I have faith in God and the future. Whoever I marry next will be grateful for a man like me and loyal. But until then I'm gonna enjoy the single life again and just play. She started working at a job with people that were closer to her age, 25 to 30, instead of a job where her coworkers were in their late 40s to early 50s. She wanted to go out and hang out with them rather than come home and be with her family. Myself and our at the time 2-year-old daughter and a godforsaken cat that she just had to have. There were a lot of other little things that added up over time, mainly her desire to drink and drive, without our daughter in the car thankfully, And 4 days a week of not coming home until 2 or 3 in the morning and not telling a soul where she was or what she was doing. After a month of that, she said she wanted a divorce. I fought it with everything I had for 3 months. Decided to go to counseling, where the counselor asked her ex-wife, "In your mind this marriage is already over?" After a literal 5-minute silence, I had the answer I needed. Separated a week later and divorced a year later. We're still civil for our daughter's sake. But I will say that after the initial shock of actually going through a divorce after us both proclaiming to do whatever it takes and never getting a divorce, I will say I'm much happier now. I was able to save up and buy a house for my daughter and I, which I never would have been able to do had I stayed married. I was standing next to one of my best friends waiting for the ski lift to start up when his brand new wife leaned over and said of course it's broken if their mechanic is Mexican. The shock in his face leads me to believe that's the moment he knew they would divorce in a few months. Edit. To answer some questions. No, she was not joking. We were all frustrated waiting for the ski lift to come back on, so she was dead serious and angry at the mechanic. They got married extremely fast, just over a year, because she was extremely attractive and my friend was not thinking with his better head. As he gradually learned more about her, they broke it off around 6 months into their marriage. He is still to this day an idiot around women, which is dangerous because he is now a hedge fund manager. As a woman going through a divorce right now, this thread makes me sad but is forcing me to have some self-reflection in order to prevent it from happening again. That being said, my STBXH told me that he knew he had to leave because he just couldn't stop himself from messaging all those girls he would meet online, and he knew he was going to cheat on me physically very, very soon. That's a direct quote. We had been having sesh at least 3 times a week. I had been initiating. The last time we slept together was the day before he left, and he asked me not to leave visible scratches on his back and said it wasn't attractive that I got so into it. So I'm guessing his reason was he found me repulsive. He never said that to me directly. Saturday before Easter of this year she came to me with her desire to go to Germany and see friends that would pay for her round trip there and back. We got into an argument about it. I voiced my suspicion that something more was going on. We didn't speak on Sunday. Then Monday rolls around and she tells me she's done. So I get home early, look around on her laptop and find chats between her and her German girlfriend. I invade her privacy because she had cheated before. She had been planning on divorcing me since November last year. So I call her at work and tell her to pack her sheet and get out. I feel so much better not having the trust issues with her, but this whole ordeal is wreaking havoc on my 3 children. I always refused to raise my voice during arguments, which usually made her crazier and scream louder. After one such argument, during which our 3-year-old daughter was playing upstairs, she started coming down at the same time her mother was storming up the stairs like a child of comparable age. Our daughter was in the way and her mother got in her face and screamed, "God, I fucking hate you, move." Of course, my daughter came to me, hurt. That was the moment I decided it was over. Edit. This was 13 years ago. My daughters are now 16 and 12. Unfortunately, I found out the hard way that, particularly in that day and age, family courts were seriously skewed towards the favor of the mother in many cases unless there was proof of serious neglect, drug abuse or physical/sexual abuse. The girls, I believe, are fairly well adjusted and doing okay. Their mother changed in regards to her direct dealings with them, however continued and still uses them as a way to hurt me whenever she sees an opportunity. I've taken her to court for custodial interference, which is punishable up to 30 days in jail and a $1,000 fine, and they slapped her on the wrist with not so much as an admonishment. It's faked, but I do my best to keep an eye on the situation and try to give them as much stability as possible when they're around me, so they have an idea of what normal is. I endured a physically, emotionally, and mentally abusive relationship for over 6 years with my first wife, 4 of which we were married. There were many, many instances that should have caused our marriage's demise. The proverbial straw that broke the camel's back, though, was 8 days after I had major oral surgery. Due to a freak medical occurrence, I had to have 28 teeth cut out and 2 holes drilled into my sinus cavities from top of the back of my gums. She and I were in a grocery store parking lot, and I asked her not to start an argument in the store because it's a small town and I was so tired of being those people. Her reaction was to backhand me in the mouth, 6 times. Or at least I counted 6 times because I'm pretty damn sure I lost consciousness. I just remember waking up when we were pulling into our driveway while she's freaking out because my face is against the window and blood is coming from my mouth like a fountain. I'd found evidence of potential cheating. Despite this, I still was willing to work on things. I confronted her about her feelings towards me, not the cheating. When I pointed blank asked her if she was interested in counseling or trying to work things out, she said no. That was the first time. It would have been better to have stuck with it. There was a tumultuous time after that where we flip-flopped and were trying to work things out, sorta. She complicated things. I had broached the cheating with her and we made rules during our maintenance period. One of which was that she was no longer to have contact with her friend she was cheating with. I ended up finding out that she was still Facebook friends with him. When I calmly explained why this would hurt me, she turned it around that I was the bad guy. I started living with a friend at this point. During my drunken half-sobbing tirade where I explained everything to him, I finally realized that I don't want to be with this woman anymore. She doesn't love, respect, or care for me at all, and I deserve those things. Moved out, moved on, and have since found a wonderful woman that I will marry in April, even though I figured I would never get married again. Edit. I got hurt. It sucked. It sucked really bad. I never expected to get a divorce. I took some time to work on myself and address the mistakes that I made in my marriage and past relationships. I ended up finding a person who 100% is in sync with me and communicates like a mature adult. She is super smart and helps me through my emotions as I help her through hers. I did a complete 180 on marriage. It wasn't a struggle, it feels right. I thought long and hard after I had decided to get married. I wanted to make sure I was not making the same mistakes again. I believe I've found my true partner and each day gives me more reasons to believe that to be true. Me and my ex were always having ups and downs. Cutting up my clothes when I was out with friends, cutting my hair when I was asleep, random violence and screaming fits. The usual. We did the normal things couples were supposed to do and it seemed to prolong the episode for a time. We bought a house for example. Well, after we had the house the next thing we needed was a cat. She loved it very much when it was a kitten but as it grew up it became more independent. It's a cat duh. And she couldn't take this and became aggressive towards it. I remember walking in one day and she picked up the cat and threw it up in the air. It bounced off of the ceiling and then I threw her as out of the house bouncing her sheet off the curb. I still have the cat. Sometimes when my ex and I used to fight, she would decide that she wasn't going to go to some function or honor plans we had previously made. Sometimes at the very last minute, like hanging out with friends, dinner with my family etc. For example, we got into some argument and she decided to not go to my only sister's wedding. By the way, the wedding was that day. A year later, she did the same thing during a fight. She threatened me again, telling me that she decided to not go with me to Texas for a reunion with some of the guys I served in the Marines with. I didn't fight it this time and just said okay. Several days later she tried to renege on her threat and actually tried to turn it around on me, saying how mean I was for not wanting her to come with me. I told her that I was actually relieved that she wasn't going. I could hang out with my friends that I hadn't seen since I got out and it would be nice to not have to worry about her crazy, insecure drama. That realization, that I was going to be happier without her was the moment I knew we were done. My wife at the time told me that she had called a local radio station which often discusses hardships that military families go through and sometimes gives away $1,000 to a family in need of help. She said that she informed the radio station of my deployment and how I didn't come back the same, and she told them about our daughter, 2 months premature and only 8 months old at the time, who had numerous health problems. My wife explained to me that the radio station hadn't given away the $1,000 in quite a few weeks so they were going to give us $10,000 for her telling such a heartfelt story. She called me while I was at work to tell me what had happened and I was really excited. Asked my SNCOIC to help me draw up a savings plan and figure out which debts should be paid off first, etc. Things were looking up. I get home that night and rather than being greeted with an enthusiastic hug, she points to the loft and mouths not now. I'm on the phone. So I go upstairs and wait for her to finish. While I was waiting I could hear her saying things like yeah I can get those papers to you and no problem. I can have that ready by tomorrow. Maybe they need identification and proof of my deployment or something, whatever. Fast forward to later that night and like usual I'm having trouble sleeping. I decided to get on the computer and listen to the podcast from the radio show. After a few searches I find it and start listening to it. This is where my blood starts to boil. She told the DJs that she was a single lady living on her own and that her sister married a Marine and they had a child named Marie, our daughter's middle name. She goes on to say that Marie is now in her custody after the Marine husband, was killed in Afghanistan and the mother, her IRL single sister with no kids Jackie, was killed in a car wreck and Marie was now my wife's responsibility. Hundreds of people called in and offered to help, many of which owned business and wanted to offer things like baby supplies or completely furnishing a nursery for her. Literally thousands of people had heard this bullshit fabricated story, including some of my co-workers. It was the radio station she was on the phone with and they were asking her to provide death certificates and a birth certificate for Marie, which is why I was shooed away. I made dinner and baked a chocolate cake for her birthday. She came home that night weeping about her problems. Work is rough, her friends are all jerks, her parents are this and that is that, etc. I consoled her as I had every night for the past 3 years and tried to convince her to eat. She proceeded to lecture me on words to say to properly comfort her. When a girl says blah, you are supposed to say blah blah blah. And in that instant I just ran out of Fox. It's like the needle has been on E for a while now, and the low Fox indicator has been on for months, and now the last fumes of Fox have finally been used up. I packed up all my shit into my car, grabbed the cat and left. I realize it's not the dramatic explosive end like most of these stories, nor does it paint me in the best light, but sometimes these things just sputter and die. She got drunk on Christmas Eve and told me that she had been using crystal meth again and that she would always be an addict, because it was her first love and it was there for her when she was a teenager and her mother died. She finally said she loved it more than she loved being a wife or a mother and that plenty of people lead normal lives while still being users. It crushed me. She was so hungover the next morning that she missed Christmas at my parents' house with our 3-year-old son. I tried to speak to her about it for the next few weeks and she refused to acknowledge the conversation. And things finally came to a head when she started inviting a couple of known heroin dealers into our home regularly and threatened to move out when I asked that she not bring them around our house or our son anymore. I told her we needed to talk. Me, her, and my parents who were trying to help. She flipped out and disappeared for days and when she tried to come home, I had her sheet packed up. This is going to sound really stupid, because it is, but you have to remember I was not happy. I was trying to make her happy. She was really into running half marathons and claimed that I did not support her, even though I did everything to support her including started running to participate in her hobby to show support. In the end, doing it was not enough. I had to want to do it. Anyway, end rant. The story: I drove her down to her race because she had to have me there for all her races. Got up at 4 a.m., drove her to the race, walked her to the queue. This is the point in which she should turn to me and say bye baby, I'll see you in 2 hours, kiss I love you. But instead, she puts her headphones on, does not say a word, does not turn around to wave. or smile. It was like I was not there. I actually said out loud, "Oh wow, we are going to get a divorce." She fought with me because she wanted me at every race, but it was not about me being there to support her running. It was about me being a chauffeur, or maybe it was about control. I don't really know. Man, I need a hug. My ex was one hell of a disaster, yet I stood up by her and tried to work with the hand I had been dealt, so to speak, because she was my wife. I discovered she was cheating on me. I expelled her from my house. As the rage subsided, we started talking again. I convinced her to move back in and we agreed, as she had suggested when I first confronted her, to go to therapy together. She promised to never contact the guy again. 5 months later, as I am finally facing the fact that she lies to me constantly and about all kinds of things, besides the usual not putting up with her share of the effort, expecting me to foot the bill on everything, not sharing stuff she should be sharing with her husband, etc., I discover she's talking to the guy again. So, she keeps cheating and I don't trust her word one bit. I'm done here. Now, we had a kid together, and this was in late November, so I chose to extend my misery for 7 more weeks, so I wouldn't ruin my son's Christmas. I counted the days until Jan 15th, when I kicked her out for good. Those weeks weren't that difficult, actually, because she had made me miserable for years, and this period at least had a clear ending date. Divorced now, and still bitter about all the wasted years with that undeserving beach. I was traveling for work, we'd been having issues, turns out I thought they were workable and she was already done. Led me along though, had 2 kids, been together 9 years, married 7, it was agony for me, the worst period of my life. The only thing that kept me fighting was my kids, didn't want them to grow up in a split situation, was willing to suffer for them. I was out of town for work for a few days and our dog was gone when I got back. She had given it to the neighbor who then just gave it to some friend out of town. I spent a year looking for that dog. I still think about it and hope he lived the last half his life happy because he loved our family. The reason? She was just tired of taking care of him. He was a great dog, really smart, well trained, great with the kids. How can someone just do that? That's when I knew she wasn't who I thought she was. Fast forward 11 years, she's been married, divorced, and remarried, has adopted and dumped like 15 cats and dogs over the years. What the fake? They aren't furniture. The 2 kids I have with her are remarkably well adjusted. I have them half the time. Our custody situation is pretty great. She's a decent mom, just horrible about commitments to husbands and pets. I've been remarried 5 years to the most incredible woman on the planet. Looking back, I have no regrets, except for losing track of my dog. I'll never forgive myself or her for that.